Now that I had access to all these ultra processed foods, I was having yeast infections, skipping a menstrual cycle, mood swings, irritability, lots of acne. I was taking a nap every single day. So there were small little things that I thought were just normal. I was cold. I was losing my hair. My menstrual cycle started becoming irregular, eating a meat-based diet. And I have so many people who come to me during one-on-one coaching calls and their thyroid's getting worse, or they're having all these negative things happening. And I don't think it's because meat's doing it to them. I just don't think they're having enough. I get just as much negative comments from strict carnivores as I do from vegans. Like a late bloomer, didn't have a menstrual cycle for very long, but then also would have it like only one time every 3 months. So now it's on time, it's on schedule, and I have absolutely no cramping.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome. We have with us Lillie Kane, I believe. Lillie, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing? It's a nice sunny day here in St. Louis, but I'm ready to get outside, actually.
Okay, are you St. Louis? Are you in Missouri or Kansas?
Missouri.
Okay. I don't know which one's better, but I think they're pretty close to each other, right? Or just across the border, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No, we're not that close to Canada.
No, not Canada. Never mind. Okay.
Oh.
Anyway, you are, I guess, I'm trying to figure out, I see you've got a social media. I was going to make this comment. There's an article that came out recently extolling, it was actually fairly positive for carnivore. It had the usual caveats to vitamin C and blah, blah, blah stuff. And they call us meat-fluencers. So I'm a meat-fluencer apparently. And I'd welcome you into that category as well. So it says you're a certified nutrition health coach. You're on YouTube, you're on social media. Tell me a little bit about your background. How'd you get started in this stuff?
I grew up in San Diego, California. My parents were both addicted to drugs and alcohol. So unfortunately, the relationship didn't last very long. And my mom was a single parent who did her best to keep a job. But because of her addiction, we just grew up very low income, eating lots of top ramen, peanut butter jelly sandwiches, just really ultra processed cheap food. And in a way, luckily, that meant that I wasn't able to overconsume food. We didn't have tons of desserts and sodas and things like that in the house. But I think that was one of the reasons why I was actually slightly underdeveloped as a child. I'm pretty short in stature. My jaw's pretty narrow. I had to have a retainer that cranked open my jaw. I had headgear, braces, rubber bands, a neck brace, all sorts of things just to get me in alignment when I was younger. When I went off to college, I gained the freshman 15 because it was finally time to have access to the all-you-can-eat buffet, which I was actually pretty happy about. I was a track and field athlete, so I see what your daughter's running. I'm like, whoo, she was faster than me in that 400. I was able to maintain my weight at least for the years that I was in college, though now that I had access to all these ultra-processed foods, I was having yeast infections, skipping a menstrual cycle, mood swings, irritability, lots of acne. I was taking a nap every single day. So there were small little things that I thought were just normal. It's what happens when you're younger. And then I ended up graduating from college in Minnesota, wanting to go back to the sunshine and the beaches, but not wanting to go back to California. So I moved to Maui and met my now husband there. And he was someone who had already done the all fruit fruitarian diet, the vegan diet, the vegetarian diet, paleo, Mediterranean. He had done all the different kinds of diets. And from the years of doing a plant-based diet, he ended up having a lot of gut issues and skin issues because of all of those, unfortunately, years of trying to do the best thing for his health, the environment, for the animals, that caused him to end up getting pretty sick. So when I stepped into the picture, he had already done a ketogenic diet. He had already had his gut healed. But then I snuck in and said, hey, we're having pizzas and tacos and alcohol and cookies because we can get away with eating these things because we're going to go and work out. But unfortunately, he ended up having a lot of his skin issues and gut issues come back. And so he ended up saying, you know what, Lillie, you can keep doing what you're doing. I'll go and drive you to get a donut, but I'm going to go back to eating a ketogenic diet, which inevitably, as I continued to look up to him and be inspired that he didn't need to have dessert to be happy, that I in a bowl of cookie dough and he was not needing to have any of that. And he was still very happy. I started asking more questions and learning, why don't you want to have these tomatoes? Oh, lectins. What's a lectin? Oh, why don't you want to have certain things? And just by being around him and because we grocery shop and cook together and have our meals together, I just slowly started falling into it.
Okay, that's quite a background. It's interesting. Like I said, you grew up with not a lot of money, and there's a lot of people in that situation. And that's just in the US, and you go to the rest of the world. And where there's a lot of poverty worldwide, there's often malnutrition, stunting, nutritional deficiencies, and so on and so forth. There are, here in this country, the poor tend to be obese in many cases because of the access. The main food you can eat is this really cheap, very low quality, but often high in calorie food. Now, like you said, you guys were poor enough to where you didn't even have enough calories to maybe, for good or bad, to develop those aspects of it. But you mentioned short stature, maybe dental, mouth development issues around diet. That's the work of guys like Weston A. Price talked about that way back in the 1920s, I believe, 20s, 30s. And we see that nutrition has a huge role in development of kids. That's an important aspect. It's interesting that your husband had been on all those different diets there. And I don't fault anybody for trying these things, but ultimately you should and eventually do what makes the most benefit to you health-wise. Were you ever tempted when you first met him to try to go down this plant-based fruitarian route? Was that ever on your radar?
So because he had already done them prior to me meeting him, he could tell me the pros and the cons. So he's like, the pro to eating the all fruit diet is I felt very light. I had some really crazy wild dreams, but I started having gout-like symptoms and I couldn't walk and I had to call up of work and I started having all these different health issues. I was never influenced to have more plant-based. My aunt has still to this day been vegan my whole life, knowing her. So I remember when I was a little kid and I asked, oh, what is a vegan? My aunt said, oh, we don't eat meat. And I was like, but what about bacon? She's like, no bacon. And I was like, ooh, I could never be a vegan. So I never really got into the plant-based movement.
Yeah. Hopefully your aunt is still doing well, by the way. I never wish bad for anyone, but sometimes we all have these crazy uncles and aunts. There's somebody in the family that doesn't quite, and probably they think I'm crazy because I just eat a bunch of meat and so on and so forth. And, it is what it is. I'm looking at behind you, you've got a number of textbooks in there. I like the sarcasm is welcome sign. I think that's quite good. I'm a big fan of sarcasm in a lot of cases, but what was there, you said you gained weight in college. What did you study in school, by the way? And then how did you decide that, you mentioned your husband, was there a certain moment you said, hey, I'm just going to go do more of a meat-based diet? When did that come about?
So my background is in economics and accounting. So that's what my major was. And then basically he started moving more into a ketogenic diet and I was still eating my processed food diet. And then slowly I was like, okay, I guess I'll not have bread for this week. Okay, I guess I won't have rice this month. And then slowly started noticing I'm losing weight. My energy is coming back. My joint pain in my knees from 8 years of doing hurdles has gone away completely. And I slowly started noticing these little things improving that I thought were inevitable and I was going to have for a lifetime. So he actually kept going more and more meat-based first because he was saying, you know what, Lillie, I don't think the broccoli's agreeing with me still. I don't think the asparagus is helping my digestion. I'm still not having good stools. I think it's from the cauliflower. So he slowly was removing the veggies. And then I was looking down at my plate and I was like, that's not fair. How come I have all this cauliflower rice, cauliflower wraps, cauliflower pizza crust, cauliflower, and you get to have more bacon and more cheese and butter and delicious meat? So I slowly started having less of the veggies. But then the other turning point would have been a video on YouTube from Dr. Ken Berry saying you can get all the vitamins and minerals you need from just beef, bacon, butter, liver, eggs, and sardines. So we were already eating all of those foods, but we were having a bunch of veggies with it. So we're like, okay, let's just slowly start having less veggies. The other turning point.
Okay. And you'd mentioned you live in, I think you said Maui for a while, which is obviously a paradise. I got to visit it for the first time in January. And I guess that's an easy place to be a fruitarian. I think there's a lot of them that live in Hawaii, I think. What prompted the move from there, which many people would say it's beautiful, back to St. Louis?
Oh, it's a long story. COVID. Basically, the whole island runs on tourism, and with COVID happening, and then everyone was getting demoted, and there was no promotions in sight and things like that. So we ended up just going back to a place that's more affordable.
Got it. Yeah, it is quite expensive there, and yeah, I think Hawaii was one of the states that was very aggressive with shutting everything down, and you can different opinions on that one. But so, how long have you been doing this meat thing?
I've been eating a meat-based diet for about 3 years now.
Okay. And so you have not developed scurvy, I would assume, correct? Is that fair to say?
Not yet. Yep.
Not yet. So I'm still waiting for mine too. I was told it was going to happen. Gosh, three weeks into my diet, I was told I was going to get scurvy. I'm still waiting for that to happen. And I don't disagree with Ken about getting your nutrient. I think you can get the nutrients we need, whether or not they make the RDA or not is, I think, a different argument. But, and I don't even know that, like I said, I'm somebody, I don't eat liver. I don't eat very much fish or anything like that. So it's pretty much just almost just plain steak for me. And I've been doing that for years. And so I think it's even more fundamental than that. But what have you learned as you've gone through this, and either with yourself or with other people you might come in contact? I know you say you do some health coaching, so I assume you're corrupting people into eating more meat, just like I am, perhaps. So what have you learned?
I would say one of the biggest things I've learned, and maybe you'll have pushback on what I'm going to say, but I find that when people move from eating a meat-heavy, protein, very satiating, nutrient-rich diet, they tend to naturally undereat. So a lot of us will say, eat until you're comfortably full. And I think that's a really good piece of advice, because I don't think humans are natural born calorie calculators. I don't think humans should be, okay, so can I have 2 eggs today or only 1? And I think people should be able to follow their hunger cues. But with that being said, I find a lot of people have a lot of hormonal imbalances, or they've had so many years of a destructive diet that they have a harder time being able to listen to their body. And so they tend to naturally undereat, even women specifically too. And I myself even came to this way of eating. And I, just from my background of pretty much being in a calorie deficit my whole life, I was eating about 1,200-ish calories. Now, I know calories aren't the perfect metric of what our bodies are using with the fuel, but it's just the way that the word that people use to explain food intake. I just myself experienced in the beginning. I was cold. I was losing my hair. My menstrual cycle started becoming irregular, eating a meat-based diet. And I have so many people who come to me during one-on-one coaching calls, and their thyroid's getting worse, or they're having all these negative things happening. And I don't think it's because meat's doing it to them. I just don't think they're having enough. So that's one of the bigger things I've learned, is that people tend to naturally undereat. And by all means, I think there can be seasons of doing that. But in the end, I focus more on helping people boost their metabolism, so that way they can get in enough nutrients that can help their body operate and function at its best.
Yeah, I don't disagree. There's a lot of people that will undereat for sure, because, the satiety that, comes with the foods we're eating, the nutrient dense, the protein, the fat, clearly blunts a lot of people's appetite in a way that, most of us, if you look around, most Americans are overweight. 72% are either overweight or obese. And that was pre-pandemic numbers. And so it's probably closer to 80% now. And many people, it would do them good to not eat as much. But you are right. There's a lot of people where a pound of meat a day is a lot for them. And I don't even bother with a pound. It's like, it's not even worth my time to cook a pound of meat. I need at least 2-3 pounds for me to even consider a meal. A lot of times it's funny, but when you made this transition, how did it go? And were there any negatives that you had experienced? Because some people say, hey, my guts are not good, or I'm tired, or headaches or cramps, or because there's definitely some physiology going on. So what was your experience like, and how did you do it, and how did you deal with it?
Absolutely. I think I'm a very unique case, because I, again, wasn't intentionally saying, okay, I'm going carnivore, I'm going keto. I just slowly was like, okay, I'm not having bread this week. Okay, I'm not having Brussels sprouts. So it probably took me about 8 months to transition into it. So I didn't experience keto flu or low energy or fatigue that I know other people may experience if they just rip it off like a Band-Aid. And I think that like people like Steak and Butter Gal Bella, she ripped it off. Vegan, carnivore, next day, done. And so there definitely are people who can sustain that and make it a lifestyle forever. But I think a lot of people, in my experience, if they go from eating their standard American diet, they just need a little bit more time to buffer into it, because it's a huge lifestyle shift. You can't keep hanging out with the same friends, eating ice cream, and you can't keep going to the same restaurants and ordering the same meals. Your whole life kind of changes. So if you do it more gradually and ease into it, you get more time to adapt. Whereas if we just rip it off like a Band-Aid, I think a lot of people end up tending to go back to their old eating habits, because now they're having all this diarrhea and low energy and fatigue. And now their friends think they're weird, or their family members are questioning them. Whereas if you just gradually move into it, not only is it going to be easier on your physiology, but also on just your social life and just your lifestyle in general.
Certainly some people need to transition. There's no doubt about it. I think the sicker you are, the more medications you are on, going cold turkey in those cases might be problematic. And one of the reasons we're setting up Revero is because some people really need physician oversight in many cases, or it can certainly make it better. The problem is most physicians have no clue about carnivore or even low carb diets or ketogenic diets. And you have to be lucky to have one that's willing to work with you, and some are flat out against it. So you mentioned initially maybe you're under eating. What was that? 1,200 calories a day. I couldn't imagine existing on that. That's just not enough. And even though, I mean, you're smaller than I am, I'm sure quite a bit, but still that's not very much food. So how much do you eat now versus then? And what has happened with your body weight, body count? You still look like you're fairly lean and in good shape. So what has been the difference in caloric intake now?
So I am 5'2" tall, so I'm pretty short, but I was about 110-ish pounds initially. And then now I'm 110-ish pounds and I eat 2,400 calories. So I was able to double my calorie intake without gaining any weight. It's a slow and gradual process. I didn't go from overnight going 1,200 to 24. I was just so full. I was so stuffed. Like other people who may be listening, they're like, I can't imagine increasing my calories. That would be too much. But if you do it very gradually and strategically, you can do it in a way where you're boosting metabolism, helping your hormones, and not gaining weight. Some people even may find they lose weight as their body becomes more safe and feels okay. I can start letting go some of this adipose tissue that I was holding on to because I thought I was starving and I thought I was going to have to use that extra adipose tissue one day to not die. Yes, I am still a very small human, even though I eat, depending on the day, upwards of even sometimes 3,000 calories.
And you mentioned you ran the hurdles. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that hard? I thought maybe a taller person would do better in the hurdles. Maybe that's a misconception. I don't know. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. The 100 hurdle race, they're high hurdles, much harder for me. I have to take a more steps than other people. But with the longer hurdles, so in high school, it's 300 meters. And then in college, it's 400-meter hurdle race. So they are shorter. And if you're fast, you can get over them.
Got it. Okay. Good for you. Do you still, one of the things that you said, I went from 1,200 calories to 2,400 calories. My weight is still the same. And a lot of people would say that's impossible. And when I look at it, probably increasing protein, perhaps increasing NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, so on and so forth, that tend to occur with higher protein amounts. Have you changed your lifestyle as well? Are you exercising more? What happened to make the difference?
I would think the intensity of my exercise has probably improved because when I was going to the gym, I was like, okay, just going through the motions versus being able to have the ability to focus and then push it harder. So yes, I do go to the gym 5 days of the week for about an hour and I do heavy lifting. I'll do a back, leg, chest, shoulder, and arm day. And then I do about 45 minutes of walking each day. I'll do 3 15-minute walks, one right when I wake up, one after lunch, and one after dinner. So I was doing all these things prior when I was eating less. I just don't think I had as much oomph in them when I was doing them.
Yeah. Okay. And you mentioned lunch and dinner. Are you're not a breakfast person, I guess? You just 2 meal a day type of thing, or what do you do?
I did 2 meals so in the beginning, when I first transitioned over, I did 2 meals in a day for a couple of years because I was just not hungry, but I wanted to make sure but then when I started increasing my calories, then I was sitting down and having just these huge, massive amounts of food, which, like you said, you're a bigger human than me. You could probably get away with doing 1 or 2 meals and being able to eat and digest all of that. For my little tummy, I have to split it up. So at this point, I actually do more like 4.5 meals. So they're not very small meals. So I'll have a glass of raw milk when I wake up, then a glass of raw milk when I get back from the gym in the morning about 9:30. Then I'll have lunch and dinner. And the half meals after dinner, I'll take my walk and then I'll come back and have my dessert.
Okay. And you mentioned milk. What are your meals and what is your quote unquote dessert? I'm just curious to see what that is.
Yep. Raw milk. I have 2 glasses of raw milk a day. And then, so those are each like 1 meal. And then my lunch. So like, for example, today I have a steak ready for me, but otherwise I do tons of ground beef, lots and lots of ground beef, but then we'll rotate through. I'll do sardines or salmon or shrimp, elk, bison, venison, lamb, chicken. I rotate through the meats. I like to have a little bit more variety. And then same thing for dinner, just do some more meat. I'll have some raw cheese with dinner usually, or some butter. And I'll do bone broth. So I do like the carnivore rainbow of lots of different variety. And then for dessert, I'll have raw yogurt. And in the summertime, I like to have a little bit of something sweet. So I will have a piece of fruit with my dessert.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. And so obviously dairy you do well with. There's some people that don't do well with dairy for various reasons. And it seems like you're doing great with that. Is that fair to say?
I have been lactose intolerant my whole life. I grew up drinking Lactaid milk. It didn't really have any cheese or anything growing up because I would have to have a lactase supplement. But the inclusion of raw dairy, which was my first time being exposed to raw dairy about a year ago, having that raw milk that has the enzymes in it that break down the lactose in the milk, then I don't need to take those lactase supplements. So I think that the kind of quality of dairy somebody's consuming, like the A1 versus A2 kind of dairy, if I'm doing A2 grass-finished raw milk from my local farmer, I can do very well. If I were to do something store-bought and pasteurized in A1, probably not as well, but yes.
And I guess, and I'm not sure, I know it varies from state to state, but Missouri is a state where raw milk is completely legal, or what's the story on Missouri?
It's, so Dr. Kevin Stock and I live 10 minutes away. So we are like in a raw milk competition. We use the same farmer, but we will do, so it's illegal to sell raw dairy in the grocery stores, but it's legal to buy from a local farmer.
I see. And I was going to say you could just pop across to Illinois, and I don't know what Illinois' laws are. There's one thing living on the border. When I grew up, I lived in border of Illinois and Indiana, and I remember you could switch time zones. It was just like something was closed, you just run across the street, and it was a different time zone, and so you could get something later. And I think it came in packed with a drinking age when I was a kid or something like that. But anyway, as far as now you're on social media, you got a YouTube channel, you've got Instagram, I don't know, probably TikTok and stuff like that, I'm guessing. How has that been for you? Have you largely gotten mostly a good response? Are you getting some of the negativity? A lot of people, we get a lot of the plant-based people that come in and call us animal abusers and blah, 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 their nonsense they like to do. Has the experience largely been good, or has there been a mixture?
I would say I get just as much negative comments from strict carnivores as I do from vegans. So for overall, my experience has been really great. It's like the 1 out of 100 comments, maybe not positive, but when I started on social media a couple of years ago, I was doing more of the Kelly Hogan, Lisa Witteman, Laura Spath carnivore approach, where it was like, we have our meat, but we have some seasonings, we got some condiments, a little bit of something if we need a little bit of something. I've never been a coffee drinker, but then back then it was okay to say you're eating carnivore. But then as the years have evolved, it's like the plants are trying to kill you. Don't even eat bacon because it has celery powder in it. Don't even think about putting mustard on your burger patty. So I have found that if I make a title with the word carnivore in it, and there's even a little bit of something in there that's not, I have to change the title, because otherwise the carnivore police are going to come after me. Otherwise, equal life between vegans and strict carnivores.
Yeah, interesting. And I sometimes get that. You posted a picture of, it's funny, I went to In-N-Out and had some burger patties, and I posted that. And I do that once in a while. Once I'm on vacation, out of town traveling, and a lot of people like it. I get thousands and thousands of people like it, but you do get this percentage of the population. Oh my God, how dare you eat that stuff? And it just cracks me up, because I'm like, I literally know thousands of people that thrive and reverse their disease eating this very exact same thing. And so anyway, I know there's it must be grass-fed. And as you probably know, maybe you don't, maybe you don't, a lot of the labeling in a grocery store, for instance, if you buy from a grocery store, it says grass-fed on there. There's no telling what that is. If it says natural, there's no telling what it is. It's all, the animal had access to grass, had it wanted it, but we finished it out on grain anyway, and it's still called grass finished. So we're grass fed. And so it's just, I see some of the hypocrisy there, and it is frustrating on all fronts. Like I said, I've been very much do what's working for you. And even if it includes some plant food, some fruit, some spices, I don't really care. But we do have that. We do have the people that are almost take it to a religious like extreme, which I think is not whatever floats your boat. If that works for you, great. But anyway, so what, as far as you said, you do some health coaching, what does your typical client look like, and where are they at, and where are they going with you?
That's a great question, because it's all over the place, right? I'll have women, I'll have men, I'll have young people, I'll have people, teenagers, I'll have people who are in their 70s. But if I had to make an average, I'd probably say a 50-year-old woman who is trying to lose weight. So they maybe are coming from a background of eating a plant-based diet, or maybe they have thyroid problems. But most of the time, I'd say 90% of the time, let me back up. I think when people eat a meat-based diet or an animal-based diet, most people just immediately find health. But of the people who are, when someone's thriving and they're rocking it on carnivore, they're not going to book a coaching call. They're doing just fine. They don't need to talk to me. But for the people who are losing their hair, their menstrual cycle, their sleep's getting worse, they're having thyroid issues, then they're going to book a call. So for the people who aren't succeeding, the people who aren't finding health immediately with carnivore, I would say that the 90% of people who I see are under eating. So I would say a lot of that is like helping people with boosting their metabolism. And even sometimes during the coaching calls, we're talking about how it's okay to eat plants. It seems ironic, but I have unfortunately, I feel like recently it's been a lot about the carnivore diet is creating like food fear and food anxiety. And like, I'm nervous to eat the sausage because it has black pepper in it. So I have to spend some of the coaching call making them feel a little bit more at peace that yes, plants are trying to kill you, but so is my cell phone and the pollution outside in the air and a lot of things are trying to kill you. So we just got to do our best and make things a little bit more sustainable and enjoyable and find the peace and the balance, which is pretty hard, but it's doable.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think I do find some people where they have to be very strict for at least a period of time, and some people for indefinite periods of time, but that's not the majority of the people, which is, I think, is a good thing. You said your husband was the fruitarian, the vegan, all that stuff. Is he pretty much doing carnivore now too? Has he embraced what you're doing, or is he there?
Yeah, he's the one I never even knew him when he was plant-based. He was never plant-based when I knew him. So he was the one who initiated the animal-based, meat-based eating. Unfortunately, I don't think that he found as much health in it as he wanted. Like, he did things that did improve, but we work out a lot. He's like a bodybuilder kind of guy. So he needs just a little bit more energy from carbs. So he will have a little bit more fruit than I will. But otherwise, yeah, he's very much meat-based.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about your workout ability as a track athlete. Did you run the hurdles in college too, or
I did. Yes.
Okay, so decent level athlete. How has a meat-based diet impacted you athletically, either pro or negatively or positively?
Initially, and I have older videos where I said, hey, the carnivore diet made me have a pancake booty, because I just think that I was able to push it further and push it harder in the gym initially. And then after talking more to Robert Sykes, Keto Savage, and Dr. Anthony Chafee and Kevin Stock, I was like, come on, you guys, there's no way you're actually able to like push it as hard without any carbs. And they're like, I just don't think you're like fully in fat burning mode. Like, you just got to do it for, even sometimes it takes a longer adaptation for people. But if you're in the middle, wishy-washy, having some carbs, but having fat, then you can't really become as efficient as burning one of the fuel sources. So they gave me more confidence in doing more fat for the energy, but I still do have some carbs because I find that I have so much more brain fog and just feel dehydrated when I'm at the gym. So just having a little bit of carbs, like 20, 30, 50 grams of carbs, is like plenty for me to feel the endurance, I think. I don't think my strength has ever suffered whatsoever. It was more my endurance that was a little bit more impacted.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I think that there's a minimum effective dose of carbohydrates that they need for athletic performance. Some don't. Depends on the sport, depends on the individual, is what I found. I personally don't need, I do fine without them. But I've never been like an endurance sport athlete. I'm not going to go out there and run a marathon. I have no desire to do that, but I do a lot of high intense stuff, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, training, rowing, all those things. And I've been able to do quite well with those without really any carbohydrate at all. So you mentioned you'd lost some weight, you're able to eat more calories. Have there any health benefits that you want to talk about that maybe that aren't, gut health, gut hair, skin, mental health, female health, reproductive health, any things that have improved on the diet, or what has been the impact overall to you?
I would say one of my biggest benefits and things I'm grateful for is I saw one time when I was younger, a tooth being put inside of a Dr. Pepper, and the tooth decayed immediately. So I was like, ooh, I don't want that happening to my teeth. I'm not drinking soda. So for many years of my life, and probably since I was like 10 years old, I haven't had a soda. And when I would go down the grocery store aisles, it's not like I was like, oh man, I wish I could have a soda. I just don't even see it's there. It's like dog food to me. With all the other junk foods and processed things that I used to eat, I still had that addiction. When you see the Lucky Charms box, it lights up your brain, makes you want to have it. You have this kind of uncontrollable impulse to just grab that Snickers bar. And so I feel like eating a meat-based diet has given me the freedom to make my own choices, where when my husband would walk down the grocery store aisles, he wasn't tempted by anything. And we would get to the checkout aisle and I'd say, okay, sweet. I only put the healthy things in my cart, but now we're at the checkout aisle and there's Hershey's and Reese's and Snickers all staring at me at the checkout lane. And I told him one day, I said, don't you ever just want one of these? He goes, what? Oh, I didn't even notice it was there. So to him, it was the soda aisle for me. So I think that unfortunately, the way in which advertisements work and commercials and propaganda and the addictive chemicals and things that big businesses put inside of their foods to make us the certain crunch, the sound, the pop of the soda can, all these things that create a response in us to want to have those foods. I feel like I finally have the freedom to make my own choice and be like, actually, I don't have any desire to eat those things. So that's a big benefit. And then as far as physical things that have changed, my menstrual cycle was always pretty much a mess. Like I said, I was underdeveloped growing up as a kid. So I was like a late bloomer, didn't have a menstrual cycle for very long, but then also would have it like only one time every 3 months. So now it's on time, it's on schedule, and I have absolutely no cramping, which I used to be in school and have my mom come and pick me up because I was in too much pain to even keep my head up on the desk. I had the nurse wheelchair me out of school. Embarrassing things would happen because I was in so much pain with my menstrual cycle cramps, needing to have the heating pad and my legs up on the wall and taking tons of Tylenol and Advil at the time. And then now it just happens. Painless, don't even know it's coming. It just easily comes. So I know that part of being a woman has definitely improved. And then things like my skin, acne, no more acne, less joint pain in my knees. I think that was more due to like oxalates, honestly, because once I stopped having lots of spinach and doing lots of the oxalate high foods, I think that was what was causing my knee pain to be very severe, where I had to use crutches at one point, call off of work because I was in so much pain I couldn't walk. So yeah, just like small little things between like mental health, irritability, mood swings, skin, joint pain, and the ability to choose my own food without having to be dictated or like manipulated by big corps, making me want to have their very highly palatable, addicting food.
Yeah, and that is these foods are very addictive. They're very palatable. They taste good for sure. There's no doubt about it. No one would deny that. There's some people say, oh, I can't look at that stuff now. It disgusts me and stuff like that. But I look at stuff. It still looks good to me. But I have the ability to not eat it. It's just like, okay, it's fine. It looks good. I'm sure it tastes good, but I don't really want it. And I think it really is a freeing concept. And a lot of people think, I couldn't imagine not being able to eat all this junk food all the time. And I'm like, I couldn't imagine where that was such an important aspect of your life, that being able to shove multicolored food in your mouth daily is what gives you joy. And for some people it is. For some people, it's the only thing that gives them joy in many cases. And it's quite a sad place to be in. And unfortunately, we're getting these corporations, governments, institutions telling us that's okay. It's okay to be there. I think it's a bad message. As far as, because you're still, I'll call you a young female demographic, I see a lot of women, particularly on social media, talking about different nutritional strategies. And a lot of people on the, maybe not even the plant-based side, but women talking about how much bloating they have and how normal it is. Embrace the bloat is what they say. What are your thoughts on that? Is that something you've noticed a difference in the digestive function?
I was in college. I was lean. I was running, but I had a man tell me, you look like you're pregnant. And I was so embarrassed when I'd walk down the cafeteria aisle. I would try to suck in as much as I could because of that comment. Yeah, no, definitely no Buddha belly, no bloat. I didn't even hear about that, like embrace the bloat quote. But yeah, that digestion, I actually am like one of the unique cases of somebody who actually goes to the restroom twice a day. I know it's not very common within like the animal-based community. Some people are going one time a day or one time in 5 days. But yeah, my digestion is just really keen right now. It's super good. You can give me a bunch of steak and I'll turn it into something beautiful.
Yeah, that is, I think, what we notice. People think you're constipated. No, you're just actually absorbing your food. It's actually getting to where it needs to be. It's not just taking up residence in your colon where, I think if you look at how much food is actually wasted on a plant-based diet, and it's not the vegetables you throw out they go bad, and the organic fruits and vegetables get rot in your fridge and you end up throwing them out. But much of the nutrition actually ends up in your toilet because you don't even absorb it there. So it's a very inefficient way to consume nutrition, whereas an animal-based diet is. I can count, I don't think I've ever thrown out a steak. And I think about it, I never waste really animal foods. The worst it comes to is I go on vacation and I might overbuy because I'm cooking my own meals. I'm like, oh crap, I can't take the steak on my plane. I better hurry up and eat it. Or the worst case scenario, I've given it to people. I said, hey, look, I got an extra steak. You want it? And go knock on the neighbor door at the next house and give it away. But I never throw this stuff away, and it's all being absorbed nutritionally in me. And so it's a nice thing to do. As far as what you've got, this obviously the social media stuff. What are your plans? What are you planning to do? Do you have dreams of the future, or where you plan on going with this stuff? And do you see your diet evolving and changing significantly? Or are you pretty happy where you are?
I hope my diet evolves and changes, because I would be surprised if when I was 22 years old initially, when I started doing more low carb, that I had it all figured out. So I have continued to evolve and change over the years. I go through different seasons where it's okay, let's try carrots for a month. Oh, no, not so much interested in that anymore. Let's try this for a month. It did evolve too, from having 2 meals in a day to now having 4 meals in a day, having dairy. So it has continued to evolve. I hope it continues to evolve, but it's going to be safe, meat centered, and very much animal based. And as far as like content goes, I do talk a lot about meat, but I think the reason people keep coming back is because I'm talking about smiling, essentially. I just want to bring people more positivity and joy. That's the reason I got on social media. Initially, it was because COVID was happening. There was a lot of negativity. A lot of people were going through hard times, having depressive thoughts, and I just have a lot of love and joy to give to people. So I might be talking about animal-based diet, but I'm really secretly giving another message about being just a good person and a happy person, and talking a lot more about too, like getting outside in the sun, taking a walk, moving our bodies. I don't think humans were meant to be indoors and sitting in all the time, and building community. I think even though we can argue about what the blue zones actually eat, I think that a commonality between the longest lived people is having community. So I think, just all of it, meat-based, but also living happy lives.
Good for you. Yeah, I think that is, we do need a lot of positive, because if you look on media, social media, it's mostly about negativity and things that make people mad. That pissing people off sells, unfortunately. Yep. And having a nice positive message is less exciting, I suppose, but still it's important to get out there. And thanks for doing that and pointing that out, because it's, like I said, it's really easy to get bought up into this side versus that side type of stuff. And what are your thoughts on, so you're in Missouri. So Missouri is a decent agricultural state in the Midwest there. I don't know how St. Louis is, but some see, like you look at New York and some of these other cities, like the capital of Scotland, Edinburgh, they ban meat, or effectively in some capacity. Do you worry about that happening in St. Louis or in Missouri? Do you see anything like that happening?
I don't see it happening, but of course, stranger things have happened. I didn't think the world would shut down either. But like, I know there were different talks and things about vaccinating the cows. And like, we specifically spoke to our farmer. And so I think it's really good for people to find a connection to someone who's local, who you can physically talk to face to face and say, hey, are you doing weird things with my cows? Are they shutting down your business? What's going on? And so it's good he keeps us in the loop. Hey, I have to start charging more on taxes for this reason, or I have to make adjustments with how much dairy I can give you. I don't see it happening, but if it does happen, I'm sure we can find a loophole with my farmer, because, you got to find yourself a homie hookup.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I often will talk about supporting our local ranchers and farmers. And for those that aren't aware, I think back in the 1970s, we had something like 1.3 million independent cattle ranchers in the United States. We're now down to about 700,000. So we've almost had a 50% decrease. And I think every year, thousands of them shut up their operations. And the average age is quite old. I think it's 63 is the average age of a cattle rancher. It's got to be, like I said, I want people to support these folks that are willing to do this, because it's not an easy job. And it's something that we all depend on very much. And they're very much underappreciated in my view. Like I said, it's good to know a local person. I think it's helpful. I've got a side or half a beef in my freezer from one of the local ranchers. And I also interact with a lot of ranchers from across the country, because they send me some meat, and I'd be crazy not to eat it, but it's important to support all those folks. Let's see. Anything else you want to share? I want to ask you, do you still run? Are you still running?
No, I stopped running. I was going to say a hard, absolutely not. But I was just so broken down after the 8 years of running that my joint pain was so bad in my knees that I was like, that's it. I'm done running. I'm going to keep eating all my processed foods and stop working out, until I met my husband. And he was like, oh, I like to work out. Think about it. But no, I actually wouldn't even have considered myself a quote runner. I was a sprinter very much. So my best race was the 60-meter sprint. So I could probably count on my hands how many times I've run a mile in my lifetime. Not that's like a bragging thing. I think cardio can be good for people, but I tend to just do more strength training.
Yeah, no, I think sprinting, and I'm getting close to 60 now, and I still get out and run sprints. I still do different things, and I think that's wonderful. But I'm just wondering, with this diet, if you found, obviously you're older now, and you haven't in college, you're training every single day, sometimes twice a day, and everything goes into that. But there's a friend of mine, Cynthia Montaloni, she's now 40, I think she's 46, 47. And she was a 400-meter runner, which is slightly different from what you did, but it's still sprint more or less.
Yep.
Well, a lot of people think the 400 is like the worst. 400, 800 are like the torture events. That's what I understand. And but she's in her mid-40s and she won a world championship, and she's meat-based. And so maybe some master's track down the road, but maybe you'll have a change of heart and jump in there and do some of that for fun. I think it's great to stay competitive. And that's one thing I think is nice if you're an athlete as a kid and as a young adult, if you continue that in some form or fashion, I think it's a great baseline to start from. I've run over the years when I was training in the various sports, I ran into a lot of former Olympic gold medalists and world champions. And a lot of them were just fat. They got fat and they stopped exercising. What the hell are you doing? You used to be one of the most fit people in the world. And now you're just this kind of overweight. You're 70 pounds overweight. And I think the excuse was I just trained too hard then. And it beat it out of me. I get that. You're ground down. And then you're just like, I don't want to go there again. But I think you can find some moderation in that. So maybe are you faster than your husband? Can you beat him?
I'm sure.
Right? Yeah.
Seeing your daughter's pictures and saying how she's crushing it, but it's like inspiring. Like I still get that same rush. I'm like, like I love going to track meets or watching the Olympics and watching those activities. So anytime we see it at the gym and it's on, we're like watching the TV more than we're at the gym because we're watching all the track events. But it always intrigues me. I'm always like, I want to go back and we'll see.
Yeah, maybe just do it for fun. Get out there and you can run some hundreds or whatever, like a 60s. Or there's 7 seconds or something like that, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yep.
Somewhere there. So it's not that long. Okay, let me ask you. So we talked tangentially about your social media. What are your social media channels for people that have not seen you before?
I'm most active on YouTube, and then I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Yep, but mostly YouTube's the main bread and butter.
Okay. And what is the channel name, or what are the name of the verses? So if someone want to look you up, Lillie Kane, is that just what?
Yep, that's everything. Everything's Lillie Kane.
Okay. And it's IE, not Y, right? LILIE and then KANE, right?
Correct.
Not like Cain and Abel, but Lillie Kane with a K. And all right, that's very good. Let me think. Do you have any big travel plans for the rest of the year or anything? Do you ever go to like events or anything like that?
So there was like the low carb cruise and the keto con and all those things, but we actually just got married in March. So we went back to Maui and took our family there. So we were doing that for 10 days. And then when we came back at the end of April and May, we went down to Florida on a cruise, but not with the low carb gang. We went and did the Wonder of the Seas, the world's largest cruise ship, for our honeymoon. And then we're going to go to Pennsylvania here soon for my husband's sister's getting married. So lots of mini travels, but not at those events and things that have been going on lately because it just overlapped at the same time.
Oh, neat. I've never been on a cruise. I think I'm going to take a mini one. We're going to Egypt this November, and we're going to, I guess, get on a little bit of a cruise down the Nile. It's a cruise. I mean, I don't know how much. It's a river, so it's not like you're going across the ocean. But so anyway, I'll see. We got to, obviously, the nice thing about cruises is there's no shortage of food typically. There's lots of food. And unfortunately, people on the cruise ship, they overindulge in that stuff. And it's usually, they have all these carb-based baked goods everywhere. And it's so easy just to sort of eat that stuff. And the protein, like whenever if I go to stay at a hotel and they have a nice breakfast buffet, I'm out there just cleaning all their eggs and bacon and lunch meat and some cheese out. And I just total protein and a little bit of fat, obviously. And then just completely ignore all the other stuff. And it's interesting watching people. Have you had, this is a weird thing. I think a lot of us do this, but as you've become more and more conscious about the impact that food has on our health and our shape, when you go to the store, do you ever look at people and say, what do you got in your grocery? Do you ever sometimes you want to go up to some people and shake them and say, stop eating that garbage, but you can't. But have you ever noticed that where you go into the stores and you're like, you see a trend there, here's all this ultra processed food, and you have that ultra processed look to you. Do you see that ever?
Oh yeah, I love grocery shopping, peeping. So you look over, what do they have? Not that I understand that I should probably be like, everyone should go meat based. Honestly, that's not my intention. That's not my goal. I think that everybody can have different goals in life. So my goal is to live my longest, healthiest, best quality life. But people in my family, their goal is to be a foodie. They want to travel to different places, go to different breweries, go to the trendy donut shops, and they want to be a foodie. By all means, I am not going to judge that any more than I would want to judge myself for my own personal goal. So I might look in people's carts and be like, wasabi noodles or something, but I don't. It's not like I really care what people are eating, I guess. Maybe I should care more. But like you said, too, on the cruise, it was like, insane how much bread there was. I like forgot bread was a food. So it was like, we would sit down and they'd be like, can we get you bread? And we're like, oh, it's okay. You don't have to bring the bread to the table. And we like offended them. They're like, why not? Are you sure? We're like, it's okay. Don't bring the bread. So a second server had to come to us and say, we have gluten-free bread. Are you sure you don't want to have the gluten-free bread? We're like, it's okay. Don't bring the bread. But then when we order, we're not as picky. We're not going to say, oh, it's okay. You don't have to bring any of the extra sides. We'll just have the steak. If it comes with potatoes and asparagus, so be it. We just will pick around it. But so when we would order things like escargot, snails, then there was bread with it. It was like everything came with bread. Even if we tried to avoid the bread, we're like, wow, I forgot this is what humans eat. It's like you would go for breakfast and it's like there's a croissant, you can have twisted bread, you can have a bagel, you can have a bread with a hole, you can have a muffin, you can have sugar bread. It was like all the different kinds of bread. It was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, I can remember going to Olive Garden and eating the breadsticks and eating like 3 entire things of breadsticks before the food even arrived. Then you eat all the pasta and then you have a dessert. And it is insane how much that stuff is pushed. And it's cheap. It's cheap ingredients. And restaurants want you to fill up on the cheap stuff. That's where they make their money. And so less bread on those types of things. All right. I'll tell you what, Lillie, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you for doing this. And thanks for doing what you do in general to get the word out there. I think I am definitely seeing an incredible growth in this whole carnivore animal-based movement. Is growing and growing. I don't think it's slowing down. I think we're going to reach a threshold tipping point to one point where people finally say, look, we're tired of the BS nonsense about how meat is bad for us. And it's just, no one believes them anymore. And I think that's good. So thanks for doing what you're doing. I appreciate it. Any last minute words you want to share?
The other thing, I guess, is the reason why I love this way of eating is because it's so simple and easy. So I'm a minimalist. I know it seems ironic because I have a bunch of books and things, but this whole entire room is empty. This is just for show. So I'm very much a minimalist. And that's what kind of initially also gravitated me to wanting to eat this way. And so I think like people have a really hard time doing things that taste nasty, that they hate doing, that are complicated, that take a lot of time. Way of eating is just so simple and easy. So I think, like you said, versus having to go and soak your beans and sprout and ferment and do all the preparation and cook time for all those things, I think more people, like you said, are going to gravitate more towards this idea when they realize they can eat something that tastes amazing and is very simple and easy to do.
Yeah, fair enough. It is very simple. All right. Thank you so much. The rest of you guys, we have another one at 2:00 today, I believe. So I'll see some of you there, hopefully. Really appreciate it. Take care.